Afternoon session on global sharing. We're going to continue a lot of the discussions that we heard this morning, but get into a little bit more detail with the very vibrant group of panelists that we have that will share their perspectives on their organizations and companies on the circular economy. My name is Brendan Edgerton. I am the Director of Circular Economy at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And I would like to thank SCG for inviting both Peter and myself to attend this event. And we're very encouraged to see the momentum that circular economy is getting globally, but also here in Thailand. So with that, move to the presentation. There we are. So before we go into the panel discussion and invite our panelists up, I just wanted to give a few insights of what we're seeing as far as why businesses are interested in the circular economy and why they're taking action. What this slide shows is reflects some of the data that we collected in a study published earlier this year called The New Big Circle, in which we found through surveys and interviews that 97% of sustainability practitioners stated that the circular economy is more important today than it was 3 years ago. I think we would all assume that this is more or less the case, but nonetheless, it's very interesting to see that high of a level in anything. Further, 93% believe that the circular economy is important for their company's success in the future. And lastly, 85% expect to make higher investments in circular economy projects in the future. So certainly a trend towards increasing circular economy projects that we are already beginning to see. From the same study, we wanted to understand what are the drivers for these companies moving towards circularity. And we found that they kind of fell into two different camps. Your internal drivers that you see on the right, and that is mainly driven by top management and sustainability teams. Sustainability teams might make some more sense as to why you would see this up here. But what we found in conversations with executives is that it's the opportunity that the circular economy presents that really catches their ear. On the external side, the main drivers are the customers or consumers and regulators. Obviously, that depends on whether you're a business-to-business or business-to-consumer type of company, but nonetheless, interesting to see the primary drivers here. We also wanted to understand how do companies begin to implement circularity. So we heard a few times today that it's good to start small and then scale. That's very consistent with what we've observed. Typically, circular economy begins its journey within a company by smaller pilot projects, mostly incubated by the sustainability group and saying, this could be a good opportunity for our business. That, if successful, moves up to top management, and evaluation begins of how can we actually scale this across our business. From there, it goes back down into the sustainability groups often to help incubate that process and drive that across the different business units, ultimately allowing in stage 4 the business units to take the lead and incorporate it into their ongoing procedures. We see circular economy as a journey. Companies begin by looking at process improvements. How can they improve the resource efficiency, energy efficiency, material efficiency within their ongoing projects? Those, more often than not, make just business sense. And the next phase of implementing circularity begins when they start thinking about their products or services. So, how can we incorporate recycled content into our products? How can we think about take-back schemes to ensure that we're closing the loop? Ultimately, the ideal is to convert your business models to a more circular version. But this is not something that happens overnight, and it takes some time. So as you saw on the previous slide, where typically there needs to be a piloting project and some checks and milestones in place to ensure that we're able to deliver on the financial performance of the circular project, it takes some time to build up to the business model. We've done some studies, again, through surveys actually conducted back in 2016 through 2017, looking at what are the specific business cases are making in the circular economy. And we broadly found that they fell into these three groups of accelerating growth, enhancing competitiveness, and mitigating risk. Under accelerating growth, there's a few different drivers that companies have referenced. You can create additional revenue through selling existing products. And this could be done through moving towards a service model, remanufacturing, for example. Another way is companies find that circular economy spurs them to innovate for new products or services. And of course, what we saw in the process side of the innovation journey is that you can ultimately reduce costs in many circular economy projects, particularly if you're talking about resource efficiency. The enhancing competitiveness is also very interesting, though. Because what we found is that companies are able to build stronger relationships with not only their employees, which Peter discussed this morning about the importance of recruiting high-level talent, but also in building stronger relationships with your customers. So as opposed to selling one-off transactions of a product, how can you engage with that customer in a longer-term relationship? They're also integrating their corporate strategy with their mission. And we see this increasingly circular economy winding itself up within corporate strategy. The mitigating risk has come up quite a bit today, and I think it's particularly relevant for the plastics conversation that we're all involved in day to day. And in particular, insulating yourself from the linear risk or business as usual risk without moving towards a circular economy. So continuing to depend on landfills, to depend on virgin materials with the same degree to which we today involves its own level of risk. Briefly, how companies are measuring their circularity. This is a question that's popping up more and more. We have an initiative on it, which I could touch on in a second. But companies are trying to understand how they can measure their performance, obviously with the idea of driving more and more investment in circular projects. And this gives a snapshot across the life cycle, a generic life cycle, of what sort of metrics companies are using and the degree to which companies are using those metrics within their corporate sustainability reporting in particular. And what you'll see that's probably not very surprising is that end of life and the operation side, where you're talking about waste, end of life being waste diversion, recycled content, or recycled amount of material, and then your operations, where you're talking about energy efficiency, resource efficiency, for example, that those are more common than some of the more progressive circular metrics that we see today. You saw this slide of the work that we have available for free on WBCSD's website. Again, the new big circle is second to your right. We also have a business case for reducing ocean waste that we published with Jeff's support last year, as well as some work on linear risk and circular metrics, so you can learn more there. As Peter mentioned this morning, Factor 10 is WBCSD's Circular Economy Program. Today we have 33 companies across 16 industries representing over $1.4 trillion in annual turnover. These are the 33 companies that are participating. Again, we are very excited to have SCG to be part of that group. And within our program, our vision as WBCSD's Circular Economy Program is a world in which successful business creates inclusive and sustainable value through a circular economy. And our mission as WBCSD is to become the epicenter of circular business action. So with that, I would invite you all to contact me either here or following the session today to learn more about Factor 10 and be happy to speak. But with that, perhaps I would invite our panel up. And first, I would like to invite Kees Rade, the ambassador of the Netherlands, to come join us on stage here. Kees, if you don't mind taking the second seat. Second, we have Cort from Lux Research. From SCG Chemicals, we have Dr. Tine. And from Dow Chemical, the most valuable presenter today, Jeff Wooster.
Sawadee krap, good afternoon to everybody, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here amongst you at this event as the representative of a foreign country, from a foreign government. And first of all, I would very much like to thank the organizers, SCG in particular, of course, but also all the other parties involved in organizing this, I think, historic event about circular economy. I've been in the country now for 4 months, but I haven't seen many articles in the media about circular economy. And yesterday I asked the question, are the two words circular economy, for example, in the Thai government plans in Thailand 4.0 and so on? And well, the feeling is that probably it doesn't have a very central role there. And I really have the feeling that also thanks to the very inspiring speech by the Vice Prime Minister this morning, that today really marks the beginning of the adventure of the circular economy in Thailand. And what I would like to do is share with you a little bit a few thoughts of a European country involved for a bit longer, not that long, but a bit longer with the issue of circular economy and how we look at that. But first, I hope you all had a very good lunch, and just to pick up where I left you, now just to remind us, why are we discussing this? And of course, we heard already this morning a few facts about it, but just the climate issue, and we read a lot about it in the newspapers. Recently, for example, Antarctica came a bit more back in the publicity, because people found out that in Antarctica is warming up 3 times faster than a decade ago. And if you think that if Antarctica would melt, that would mean an increase in sea level of 57 meters. I mean, you can imagine that some pretty fundamental developments could take place, and that will take very, very, very long time, but it's more a direction which is, well, which justifies a bit of attention from the human race, I would say. But just 2 figures here. First of all, the very technical measurement of the CO2 presence in the atmosphere. It's being analyzed by particles per million. And in 1985, we were at 345 particles per million. And then scientists said if it ever goes above 400, we really have to start worrying. And well, last year it was at 411 particles per million, just to say that these developments are pretty worrying. Another one is sea level rise. Again, the annual sea level rise at the moment is about 4 millimeters, which is not that impressive. But in 10 years, it's already it's growing to 4 centimeters. And if you go on, and you see the figures here, that by 2100 we could witness already a sea level rise of more than 0.5 meter, which for many, many countries and islands in the world is a pretty worrying perspective. And the last fact here is the Earth Overshoot Day. I don't have to explain it because Peter Bakker did that this morning. But just to say that in 1969 we were still okay. We were using in 1 year the number of raw materials reproduced by the planet in 1 year. So we did not eat up the planet. But since then, Earth Overshoot Day is every year coming closer and closer. And last year it was at the 1st or the 2nd of August. So on the 3rd of August, we started using raw materials that Earth would not replenish in that same year. And of course, this is a trend that cannot go on for very long. And then, of course, you might wonder, yes, climate change is one, raw materials is something else. Why link these two? Well, studies have shown in the Netherlands that if we operate with our raw materials in a sustainable way, this could mean a 9% saving of our CO2 emissions. So there's also a link between these two. Another slide, and it might be a bit too small for you to see it precisely, but this is the World Resources Institute, a number of parameters, analyzing a number of factors between the year 1700 and very recently. And you see really that all the lines, no matter what the issue is, are really showing an incredible change, an incredible increase in the last couple of decades. So really something is going on. And if you look, this one here, at the top left, second from left, that's the growth of GDP, which is fantastic that GDP is growing, something we all welcome. But if you look the one under, the water use, you can see the dramatic increase in water use. Or the one underneath that one, the paper consumption. Again, you see this incredible increase. The number of telephones, and the number here of motor vehicles. Again, all these statistics are going up in an incredible way. And of course, this means more use of raw materials. So there's really something going on in the world. And then the question, why do we care? Does the Netherlands care specifically about this issue? Well, this is a map of the Netherlands. And in blue, you see what would happen if we would just let the sea do its thing and would not protect ourselves. A substantial part of the Netherlands, including the most populous part of the Netherlands, would just be flooded. So I was mentioning the sea level increase. This is really something, a matter of national security to survive as a country, to keep very close tab on whatever is happening with the climate and with the sea level rise. Then, the next one, so what are we doing about it? Well, first of all, we are very much convinced that we have to move to a circular economy. I can be relatively brief because it has been mentioned in many variations already by previous speakers. The only thing I would like to mention is the definition of sustainable development. What is sustainable development? And there are many complicated definitions. I like very much the definition by a Norwegian politician, Gvarme Brundtland, who said a long time ago, but I think it's very valid, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I think I like that very much, that definition. It's relatively simple, but it says it all. So anyway, what we as Netherlands are totally convinced is that one of the tools we have to change our present economic model is to go from a linear to a circular economy. It has been mentioned this morning already, so I don't have to go into that. But just to mention that one important factor is the last bullet, that waste is a valuable raw material. And we have quite some companies in the Netherlands involved in recycling. And these people always get very excited when you talk about waste. They say, no, it's not waste, it's a natural resource. It is money, we make money out of this. And we actually, as Netherlands, we have some recycling facilities that are actually importing waste from abroad because they don't have enough, they're not fed enough from within the Netherlands. Just to say, for these people, waste is a resource that's very valuable. So what have we done so far in terms of policy? I think central is that the government approached a government-wide program for a circular economy, which was launched in September 2016, which is not that long ago. And just to say that this also for us is a relatively new development, that we really have established a government-wide circular economy program only, almost 2 years ago. And the central objectives are twofold. One, we want to be completely circular by 2050. Some experts say you'll never be completely circular, but we want to try it. And by 2030, which is not that far away, we're talking about 12 years from now, we want to reduce by 50% the use of our raw materials. Again, it's a target that makes some people quite nervous. And of course, why are we doing this? Well, as I said, sorry, did I press one too much? Let's see. It goes, oh no. Yes. So, and these, I was mentioning this government-wide circular economy program, and what are the three main sectors where we have decided on measures? First of all, smart design, meaning use less resources to make something. Secondly, whenever you have something, use it longer. And this morning from Michelin, we heard that, for example, they are extending the life cycle of their tires. Well, these kind of developments are something we would definitely favor. And thirdly, coming back to the waste issue, reuse whatever is left of a product whenever it's finished its economic life. And then, of course, we do this all because of sustainability issue, but also because there is money to be made. And our Dutch companies are always very much looking for profit, and so linking sustainability with profit making, because that's also part of being a private company. And as you can see, the calculations say that we will have quite a substantial income out of circular economy, and it's quite a substantial job creator. So that's another reason why we do this. And well, many of our multinationals have found out that if you are in the beginning of a cycle, of a new cycle, you have quite a competitive advantage to your competitors who are not picking up new trends as quickly as possible. So in that sense, it's also sound economics to make circular economy very central in our approach. And then another dimension, Peter Bakker mentioned this morning quite often, we have to change our values. Well, one of the discussions in the Netherlands is that we should much more attach a true price to a product, meaning not just the raw materials that you buy on the market and you put together and you have a product and the price is whatever you had to pay to make this product, but it's also the indirect impact of a product. For example, some products might have a health impact. Health problems cost money. Environmental costs should be put into the costs of a product or the price of a product. This is a very difficult discussion, very technical, but it's certainly something that is happening in the Netherlands that we want to see if we cannot attach a true price to a product. And we do the same at governmental level with a number of other countries, the World Bank and IFC. We have set up a coalition to see if we can also not green our national accounts. So also to include on our national accounts, for example, the true cost of using raw materials, clean air, water, and so on. And this is quite an interesting direction that many countries are picking up. And the private sector is doing the same. And they have agreed in London a couple of years ago about a natural capital protocol, where also the private companies, let's say the more forward-looking private enterprises, have decided on a new way of pricing their products. So these are quite interesting developments. Then, going a bit more into the specifics of our countrywide, our government-wide program, we have a focus on 5 sectors that are kind of central for our Dutch economy and that have quite a big environmental impact. Again, waste is in all these sectors quite essential, so we have a number of funds set up to improve the waste collection. For example, we have a fund of 27 million euros to assist schools to separate better waste. It's just one of the examples. And of course, we also have, and I think I should mention the European Union at this stage, which is also a very important actor in this issue. And there are a number of Brussels directives that are also discussing the circular economy. And there is a Horizon 2020 program with 650 million euros only for circular economy projects. So there is kind of, there are quite some resources available. Then, the role of the government, because again, here I am representing a government, of course, and we've heard a lot of the private sector this morning, from Peter Bakker and then the representatives of private sector. But what's the use of the role of the government? First of all, legislation and regulation. And one example is, for example, the definition of waste. The definition of waste is such at the moment that it's very difficult to use it, as I was mentioning, as a raw material, as a resource to make products or to recycle. So this is something which is with governments, where governments should have a certain role to play. Secondly, market incentive. Of course, there we're talking about fiscal incentives, tax reductions for circular products, but of course also, for example, the procurement. governments are always very major sources of procurement. And my government has decided that by 2020 they want to procure 10% for circular products, which is an incredible increase compared to the situation now. And this is basically to try to generate movement within the private sector to think more circularly. Then the financing, of course, as I was mentioning, that is a matter of incentives, tax reductions. Knowledge and innovation, I think mentioned this morning by everybody, absolutely essential. And what we have done, for example, is set up a platform where scholars, universities, research institutions, so we have quite a lot of technical universities in Delft and Wageningen and Twente and so on, so that all these people can talk together, because I think that's another challenge, that people have to talk together to share experience, to share innovations. So that's something, and just to give a totally different example, end of August we are organizing, well, Indorama is organizing in our residency a fashion show. And young designers, fashion designers are making creations out of recycled plastic. The purpose of that is to show to the public that plastic, recycled plastic, is not some product, but it's something you can really make very nice things of it. Again, meant to change the mentality. So these are the, and then of course international cooperation, because as again I was said this morning, we have to cooperate together. We have to have agreements among governments to make sure that there are no barriers in the trade with circular products. Then, so this was what we want to do, but how do we want to do it? Well, there we want to use the polar model. I think it became clear from all the discussions this morning that we absolutely have to work together, especially on circular economy, which is a very complicated issue, going through all kinds of sectors, going through all kinds of levels, from central government to municipalities and so on. And in Holland, since we had to fight against the sea, this is a historic tradition, we are used to, whenever we want to solve a problem, always to involve all actors that have a role to play in a particular issue. It takes a lot of time, it's kind of tedious once in a while, but at the end you know that whatever comes out of it will be carried by all actors that have a role. And in that sense, that's perhaps also a suggestion to our Thai colleagues, our Thai friends, that to set up perhaps a forum where circular economy will be discussed, government, private sector, NGOs, civil society, very important, and also the knowledge institutions and universities to see together how you can bring that forward. And again, it's something we are using quite a lot, and the government is subsidizing that with a small subsidy to facilitate the process. And just to give you, and I'm nearing the end, also in view of the time, just a few examples of results of this polar approach, of this discussion. One is the Holland Circular Hotspot. That is a forum that has been set up with a number of relevant partners, ranging from universities to private sector to government institutions. And they are kind of promoting the circular concept also internationally, with all kinds of agreements with counterparts in Europe, in Asia, and so on. So this is one example of all parties agreeing on a concept. Another one is the Green Deal. A Green Deal is a very popular approach in the Netherlands, where you basically put together all actors in one specific sector, or all actors linked to one particular issue, and you give them some kind of a mandate of, you all have to agree on a measure to improve circular economy or sustainability. And amazingly enough, it really works, and really people feel a responsibility to come forward with the result. For example, just because of the time, to mention the first one, that there is an agreement between the government and all the public transport companies that by 2025, the Netherlands will only have zero-emission buses. And as you can imagine, I think we are relatively small, so we have something like 5,000 buses. But still, this is an incredible incentive for bus producers to get ready for the date of 2025, again, giving quite an impulse to the thinking on circularity and sustainability. And then to end, two specific examples, and we've heard, I found many interesting examples this morning of what is going on already. We discussed it, but it's happening. Just two examples from the Netherlands. First of all, this company, Black Bear, which is recycling tires. And the world is using, I think, 1 billion tires a year. So that's quite a lot of tires. And we heard Michelin having intentions to recycle it, which I found very positive. But this company is recycling tires into all kinds of products that can be reused. And they make quite a lot of profit for it. And per unit, they recycle 1.5 million tires a year, which is a lot of tires. And with that, they save emissions equivalent to 1 million trees. And they are very ambitious. They want to set up, I think, 80 or 100 of these kind of facilities wherever in the world there is a demand for it. And again, it's a bankable proposal, so they really hope it will take up very rapidly. And then my last example, this is mud jeans. And they are producing jeans in a more sustainable way. A pair of jeans, normally to make a pair of jeans would cost 8,000 liters of water. 8,000 liters for one pair of jeans. So what they're making jeans made of 40% recycled denim, so that is already quite a saving. But what I find more interesting is that they are leasing jeans. So you go to the shop, you buy a pair of jeans, and whenever it's worn out, you give it back, and you get a new pair, and the old one is being restored and reused for all kinds of purposes. And this is a concept, Peter alluded to it this morning already, this leasing concept. He said about a company, well, I think I can say it was Philips, that is leasing light. And this is interesting if you think of, you're not buying a lamp anymore, but you're buying the service light. And whenever something breaks down, Philips repairs it, and you're just paying a fee a month to have light in your house. And of course, the incentive for Philips is to make lamps or LED lamps that are as sustainable as possible, because otherwise they lose money. And this is, of course, an incredible incentive to also go towards a more circular economy. So this is big. I could say much more, but because of time, I'll leave it at this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kees. Appreciate it. I'd like to invite Cort to come on up, and while he's heading to the stage, do remember that we invite you to use the Slido app to submit questions, and we will collect those and share them at the end of all the presentations here during the Q&A. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? You're awake? All right, excellent. I was taken by that last slide of jeans for lease. I didn't know if I was in the market for leased jeans, but I think you've convinced me. I am today. My name is Cort, and I'm the Managing Director and Senior Vice President for Lux Research. Lux Research is an interesting research and consulting firm that tracks and identifies new emerging technologies and innovations that could be disruptive to our economies. And with that background, I was asked to present to you today what are some of the technologies and innovations that will be driving this notion of circular economies forward. And oh, by the way, Cort, you only have about 10 or 15 minutes, so could you please hurry up and do that quickly? So I'll do my best to walk you through that today. There are thousands and thousands of innovations and technologies that will be propelling and moving the idea of circular economies forward. And I thought, how can I organize for this discussion today? What can I use as a background to do that? And I think, why don't we turn to one of the world's largest companies, and that being Walmart, to see how they're organizing circular economies and what model are they using to organize themselves. So I'll share with you this slide here, which basically shows their circular economy, but in a linear format, where they've divided it up into 6 different areas impacting materials design, the manufacturing process, how Walmart can help their retailers, how they can educate their consumers, how they're implementing initiatives for reuse and recycling initiatives and repair initiatives as well to extend product life cycle use as well. So let's use this model for the talk today and kind of centralize our thoughts about technology in these 3 categories of materials design and materials manufacturing, innovations and disruptive technologies that are impacting the retailer and the user experience through the retailer to the manufacturer. And then what are innovations that we're seeing in the area of reuse, recycling, and repair as well? And where do we think that this is going to lead us forward into the future? So let's pick this first area. of innovations in materials design and manufacturing. So I don't know, for me, I'm a little bit of a science geek, but this particular area is super exciting. There's all types of innovations happening in material science that are really driving forward the notion of environmental sustainability. These are materials, maybe bio-based materials, for example, that improve the performance of a product, that can improve the efficiency of a product, made in a sustainable manner as well. But it's not just a green initiative that we're building these materials for. There's also real economic value being created. Oftentimes, these new materials can elongate the product's life. They can decrease the energy required to manufacture that chemical or material required as well. And some of the key opportunities we're seeing in this space would be including some of these bio-based materials or new emerging materials, substituting them for their petrochemical counterparts. We're also seeing innovations in coatings or sealants that can also extend the life cycle of some of these products as well. So just kind of a brief overview, but let's look at some specific examples of materials innovation and how that's playing into the idea of a circular economy. So one I'd like to share with you is this notion of smart packaging and materials packaging. You know, nanocellulose packaging has been something that's been on the radar for quite some time. How can we use nanocellulosic fibers to replace packaging from maybe wood chips or wood pulp or paper pulp for packaging products? And I think just today we're at a tipping point for this particular technology. There's companies like American Process or VTT that have demonstrated this nanocellulosic packaging product at a pilot scale, and they're just now bringing some of this material to commercial scale today. Similarly, we're seeing developers like Avantium, Corbion, and Origin Materials who are developing PEF or polytrimethylene furanonate, PTF. DuPont are also working to scale up some of these types of materials, all in this kind of category of packaging and smart packaging products as well. If you go a little bit further afield from packaging, let's take a look at some material innovations that might be used for strengthening or high tensile strength products. We're seeing a lot of innovation happening for lightweighting materials in a sustainable manner as well. And if you think about the transportation sector or mobility, if you have lightweight materials, this increases the speed or distance that car or vehicle can go without fuel, thus decreasing fuel prices and increasing your transportation range. So there's some really interesting economic models being driven by replacing, let's say, steel or aluminum alloys with some of these new materials as well. So it's not a surprise then, some of the key opportunities we're seeing would be in the automotive space. This multi-material car idea that OEMs are working with is becoming more of a reality today. Some examples we're seeing would be from automotive OEMs like BMW or Volvo. They're using CFRP, carbon fiber reinforced plastic, as frankly, a substitute for heavier weight steel. And that CFRP is has equal properties to that steel as well. Other OEMs, let's say Toyota and Honda, are looking at expanding their use of natural filler or natural fiber fillers in the automobile as well, with more than 50% of sustainable materials being primarily deployed in the internal components of the vehicle as well. So just a quick peek at some of the materials design innovations that are happening in two very broad areas, in the automotive space and then in the packaging space as well, two very exciting and fast-moving areas. If we switch then to that middle part of Walmart's sustainability life cycle, if you will, let's look at what innovations and emerging technologies are impacting retailers, users, and manufacturers in this space. Well, one certain driver here is, of course, environmental sustainability again. Some of these new materials and new technologies that are being deployed to create these sustainable products can really attract that eco-conscious consumer. There's no doubt about that. But I don't want you to think that it's just about being green. There's certainly economic value that's being created here. And I think that's primarily being driven by advantages in decreasing the cost of the manufacturing process or decreasing cost in the sales process. And I'll share some examples of what that looks like today as well. So where can we find some of these key opportunities? Well, one very hot area is in the topic of distributed renewable energy technologies. This is where you're taking waste streams that are coming from the manufacturing process and turning that waste into a cost recovery or mechanism, or sometimes a new revenue stream for that company as well. An example I have here on the screen is a company called Corbion Blue, who converts waste, and this could be food waste, agricultural waste, CPG waste as well, into an energy stream for that manufacturer on the site of the manufacturing facility. So this is all in an effort to create a closed-loop manufacturing process, decrease their energy costs, and maintaining that feeling of being energy self-sufficient. It's interesting that this just isn't an isolated case. Corbion Blue Technologies already deployed in India, in Japan, in Germany, and they have a long list of other prospective customers that they're looking to deploy this technology into. Now, that's a little lesser known case study. A more well-known case study is, of course, with the Coca-Cola PET bottle. I won't spend too much time here. I think this has had a tremendous amount of hype. But what I would like to illustrate is that not only is Coke stopping with this PET plant-based bottle and calling it a victory, they're looking into other bio-based bottle materials like PEF, which is another material, bio-based material, that exhibits similar or better mechanical properties as well. So they're not just satisfied with that plant bottle base today, they're continuing to refine this design and often offer consumers a choice of a aluminum can or a plant-based bottle that might be more economically or environmentally friendly. Now let's go into that last tier, that last third of that circular economy from Walmart, and what innovations are impacting reuse and repair and recycling technologies. So just a quick primer on this topic. The goal here is to delay either a product or a component or a material, delay it to getting into the waste stream in and of itself. So can you repair it or refurbish it in some manner that it isn't going right into a landfill? But there's certainly some economic values in deploying such technologies. Frankly, these waste streams are becoming revenue streams themselves. As you saw from the prior example, taking ag waste or food waste or CPG waste can often turn into a new revenue stream or a cost reduction stream. We're seeing, like the jeans model, many companies using this as a service model to extend the life cycle of their product or service or interaction with that consumer further and further. So what are we seeing here? What types of technologies are being deployed and what are some of the opportunities? I think the most interesting one is around 3D printing. And when you think about a circular economy, you don't really think of 3D printing as a transformational technology. But let me share with you this interesting case study from a new startup called True Marine, which is a 3D printing company. But they're not 3D printing cheap plastic polymer toys for kids. These guys are 3D printing materials, metal materials, ceramics, complex metal parts for turbines or engines or complicated components. And what does this have to do with a circular economy? They're able to do 3D printing part repair on site for marine applications. So think about a giant ocean liner or a ship or an offshore well where it takes a lot of money to take a broken part, fly it on shore, have it repaired or replaced, and bring that part back to the ship to have it installed. Now they can take that part and using 3D printing, repair and refurbish that part on site, on the sea vessel itself, saving a tremendous amount of time and money as well. So now I hope I've left you with this idea that when you think of 3D printing, it's not just a cheap plastic toy. It's really having very interesting and unique applications in some very complicated mechanical processes. Last example to share with you in this topic is around the idea of reuse and recycling. Certainly it's delaying materials from getting into the waste stream, and we've talked about that the waste stream can become a revenue stream as well. So what are some examples here? I think there's a very interesting example here with P&G, Procter & Gamble, and this company called Terracycle. The reason I called this out to you today, I think it's one of the first commercial examples of ocean waste being deployed into post-consumer waste into a recyclable bottle. So this was a collaboration between P&G and Terracycle through their Fairy Ocean plastic bottle line. I believe that's a type of soap that they're using. And it's made from 90% post-consumer waste and about 10% ocean plastic. It's being debuted in the UK. I think this was announced just last month. And their first line is going to be a production line of about 320,000 bottles as well. So I thought it was a very recent and credible example of addressing a real regulatory challenge today. What do you do with all the ocean waste that seems to be at the top of every news show going forward? So just to summarize a little bit here, nearly every major organization that we talk to has some sort of circular economy or sustainable development plans in progress or in place, or roadmaps being created by 2030. It seems like 2030 is the magical date as well. And I think the key takeaway here is if you're an executive in this room and your company is not thinking about it now, I think there's a very real chance that you will be at a competitive disadvantage in about 5 to 10 years. So the window is now. If you don't have a plan for it, this is the time to take action and stay ahead of the game. So 4 quick takeaway points, so I leave some time for my colleagues to present their presentations today. 1, I hope I've demonstrated that innovation, emerging technologies, disruptive technologies are really pushing this idea of circular economies forward. And it's really pushing the envelope of what wasn't possible yesterday is now possible today. I think secondly, historically, circular economies and sustainability discussions were really driven by altruistic behavior or philanthropic behavior. They wanted to help people, or we wanted to be more green. But these innovations that are impacting us today are making these into revenue streams or cost reduction opportunities with a real top line opportunity. So while it's great to help people and help the earth, I'm all for it, there's also a great chance to earn revenue from these activities. Number 3, I think I'm pretty safe to say that government regulations will only continue to increase. We're not going to see government regulations decreasing anytime soon, despite President Trump in the US, and I can say that because I hold a US passport. But nonetheless, any other country in the world, I expect those regulations to continue. And the other constant that I predict will continue is consumer choice. There will continue to be a consumer choice for green products, and in the past, there was a premium for it, but I don't think that's necessarily a requirement for today. We can create green products at parity. It doesn't require a premium. And lastly, number 4, I'll just highlight again that the window is open today and it will be closing very soon. If you are a corporate development executive, a strategy executive, and your organization is not creating a plan around sustainable development or circular economies, you will be at a disadvantage in about the next 24 months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cort. Dr. Tine, it's your turn.
Okay, try to use this. I start to be old, so I will not be able to see my slides that far away, so I will turn a little bit. Okay. So thank you for letting me speak here. It's my favorite topic, circular economy. I'm very happy that the world is engaged and want to work with us on this topic. I will talk about SDG, of course, and our perspectives, about the forces we see there globally, and why we are very suited to take action. And I give you a few examples on what we are working on. So our mission is really to be a global business, no, regional business leader. So we have a very large focus on Southeast Asia, but we focus very much already on innovation and sustainability. So it's nothing new, but I would say that circular economy as such, maybe during the couple of last year has kind of come up as an extremely important topic in the sustainability. So sorry for starting with this picture. This is what I would call the whale awakening. I think it's awakening because this is the whale from Norway, by the way. I don't blame Thailand for this. But it didn't take too long time and you got your own whale. And that means that it's, I promised that yesterday I would talk about emotions. This is really about emotions. And I think if you see some ugly animal which has kind of some plastic on it, you don't react so much. But when you see this whale, you do react. And this is something like my mother discussed with her friends, and I mean, she's not in the industry, and everybody knows about it. Everyone in this room knows about it. So I think that these type of happenings really, it's good because we really wake up. We have to do something. And I think we cannot behave like this any longer. Huh? We have basically used the sea as a dump for many, many years. It's been a tradition, and what you don't see, you don't care about. Huh? Now we start to see it, but actually what we see is just a fraction of the problem. Actually, I'm not so concerned of what we are seeing. I'm much more concerned of what we don't see any longer, and all the chemicals are there. And I think that the plastic industry will fix this together with the government and the rest of the industry. But we have to act. Very innocent. I got this for my bottle of water just now. So the whole stage is recycled. I got this plastic straw. We don't use so much of this in Norway, but it's very heavily used here. And I saw a lecture, and they claim that they are using 500 million plastic straw which is disposed daily in US. It's a lot of these straws. Do we really need that? I think that's where the business, also petrochemical business, need to engage and see, is this what we need? Of course, it's no problem if we recycle it. But it happens that these type of thing is not so easily recycled. It very easily land on shore. I mean, of course, that plastic is a key enabler in many technologies. But of course, we also have to realize we have a problem because we have these girls. I went to a conference. It was a conference with a lot of students. Ocean waste, of course, was the topic. And these girls came. You think the student liked them? Yeah. They are super cool. They are, one is a famous snowboarder. Actually, they live in California, but she comes from Norway. She has bronze Olympic medal in snowboarding. They have started this campaign, which is called Pledge Again Plastic Straws, which of course can be a little bit naive, you can think from the industry, but actually people listen to them. And they are traveling around, and they have this campaign, you know, at the universities around. So yes, now all people got emotional about the whale, but of course these type of movements also go to our young people. So that means that the industry, yeah, we can say, yeah, plastic is fantastic. It's fantastic for a lot of things, but we also need to clean up our mess. And this is another example. I met this guy. I didn't met him, that's to lie, but I listened to this guy, which was the founder of Parallel for the Ocean. It's an organization that really preaches about the saving the ocean. It takes cool people, like surfers and cool people, out at the sea area in Pacific, etc., and look at the plastic mess and clean up. And they have then started to cooperate with Adidas, which has made these shoes out of ocean waste plastic. Of course, you can coming from the industry, it's a lot of things they say, which you know is maybe not 100% right, but they are saying it, and people are listening to it. And these shoes of ocean plastic sells a lot. So, and even my son, 17 years, he saw them. Oh yeah, they are cool. And now Adidas is having this running campaign all over the world in different cities to collect money for the saving the ocean from plastic. Yeah? So there's a lot of this in YouTube. So I would like to show you one of these movies. Can you play the video?
Yo, get up, people. Let's run for the oceans. Come on, let's go. Every I'm gonna count you guys.
You gotta save the ocean.
What you slowing down for, baby? Do it, do it. Move it, move it. What you slowing down for,
Let's do
baby?
it.
Do it, do it. Know you're out of this world.
So I call it the influencer. Does it help? Yeah, it does. They really, people are listening to them, and we have to listen to them. Like in EU now, we are getting requirement on the plastic side. Yeah, so 2030 obviously magic year when everything should have been happening, but we need to make sure that the plastic are reusable or is it recyclable by 2030, and we will manage to do that. So I think that all this movement, lot of emotions, it gives a drive, it gives us opportunity to engage. I think what we see really is an acceleration, and we saw that on some other slides today. I mean, okay, the public is pushing the brand owners pushing the raw material industry pushing the government pushing back. And also now we see the finances going into this business. The people with the money also want to invest in clean company. So then you have the forces, and it's really going fast. So, good news, as we have already seen, it's a lot of business opportunity and a lot we can do. So, generally, I'm not very concerned. And now I've been in petrochemical business for almost 20 years, and I really see that I've never seen so much engagement around. So that's very good. People are so engaged. And everybody would like to do something. So that's very positive. In SRG, we really see that we are well positioned to make this difference. Of course, we see that we need to speed up in the Asian region. That's no doubt about that. And that motivates me also very much. I'm very happy that I'm allowed to work with this. But SRG is how I know them. We've been working together. Now I'm there as a regular employee, but I've also been working for them for 8-9 years, and really fast, forward-leaning, really want to have change. Has a strong social responsibility already in the backbone, with a long traditions on sustainable development, high on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. We have already a global presence. We are tapping into innovation all over with open innovation. I've never seen a petrochemical company being so eager on open innovation. They are really working with all kind of institutes, and we have already then our center at Oxford in UK, we have Norner in Norway, and we have many other partners around. So trying to tap into the best heads, that's the deal. We have a material diversity. Actually, we don't need to produce this in plastic. We can make them in paper. We have paper production. And, or maybe some other, maybe we should have them in plastic. I don't know. We have to look at that, but we have not discussed that yet. But we have already a lot of projects ongoing. It's a lot in pipeline, especially on R&D side. And as also Kunran wrote, he showed that we have also interesting projects. And not at least, we have management commitment. So that is so important, because it doesn't help with everybody in SRG would like to work with that if the management doesn't. We do have really heavy management commitment, so that's very good. So we are well positioned to make a difference. So I just touched upon a few examples on what we are working on, which I think I can tell. So it's about utilizing new raw materials, redesign, recycle, stimulate, clean up, understand. Some of these areas very important, of course. One project where we are heavily involved, and we've been involved with that for a long time, is to develop polymers from CO2. CO2 can be captured, for instance, from cement, which is also a large business for us. So it's a perfect match. The technology is challenging, We talked about the business earlier about pricing. Of course, we have to have a pricing which the customer is willing to pay. So that requires some innovation, but this is coming and it's a very interesting raw material. We have done a lot there. You can use it for a lot. So this is something that we are very engaged in, and we have also a cooperation with the company Iconic in UK on this. I would also like to show these because this is not only about plastic, so I need to show some other example. We are planning to be part of a powerhouse in Norway. I think that would be one of the first powerhouses in the world, which also has a laboratory. That's very challenging. That means that the powerhouse, over lifetime, the house should produce energy plus balance. And the special thing, how they do this, is to calculate the bound energy in the materials. So you have to calculate the bound energy in all kinds of materials you use in the house. So you have to consider everything. So this is a super interesting project, which we already started to look at, and we were part of the travel. They will start to build it in September. I think that also, it's very important to mention that when it comes to the paper side of our business, we are also already quite well off, I would say, and just look at this beautiful stage. We have the circulation on the carton side. We circulate very much of our paper, and you also see outside that we are doing that in more area, but we need more circulation. That's definitely true, and especially in the plastic field. We have, for instance, pallets. But here we have a lot to do together with the other businesses in Thailand. I also like to announce this one. We have just signed an agreement to be the strategic investment partner of Capricorn. That's a sustainable chemistry fund. And that is early stage money going into sustainable technology and businesses. So we will have more information on that. But this is also a way to do it, to show responsibility and to stimulate the growth of a new technology. Just my last bit, I say that people are so concerned about the things they see, and now you see all the litter coming up on the beaches. It's not nice. But actually, we have a great problem on what is already on the bottom of the sea. This is a study from the Marine Research in Bergen. No, this is Norway. It's far away. Hardly no people, but you can see from the bubble, size of the bubble show the number of items of garbage found on the bottom of the sea. And what is interesting is that especially areas with high fishing activity. So it's not only packaging which is ending on the bottom of the sea. There's a lot from the fishing industry. So, and we see that there's a lot of fishing net, etc. And those type, you will have the slides, you can look at it more closely. If you look at the fjords, something we have in Norway where the sea goes a little bit into the country, you see it's a huge allocation of garbage, and the biggest part is really, really coming from fishing gear. So our point is that we need to study more also to understand what we actually should do. And that is my last example that I will show, because SRG owns a company called Norner, so which is 100% in SRG family. Through Norner, we have now our own small expedition, and that's actually to trawl after plastics. And then I have a small movie, which basically you need to play. So we do, it's a little bit unfair to all the things that we are working on, but we're very concerned about understanding, but we also do a lot on the cleanup side and work close with the government to try to see how we can improve collection. I hope there I really hope that we can join forces with a bigger troop. So yeah, so basically just to say that we are ready for circular economy. We want to do our share, and of course we do really invite for cooperation. I think that's the key here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Jeff, welcome you up to the stage.
All right, everybody's been sitting here for a long time, so I'm just going to take speaker's liberty and ask you all to stand up for a moment. So if everyone could just stand up. And your chairs are not nearly as hard as the ones up here, so just keep that in mind. Now I want you to twist to the left and twist to the right and give a little clap for yourself for being such a good audience. And then you can sit down again at your leisure, and thank you for humoring me and giving the guys in the back time to get the slides queued up. All right, so I'm going to expand a little bit on what I was talking about earlier this morning. So I want to start with our 2025 goals and give you a little bit more history about what we've been doing as a company. We set our first set of sustainability goals back in 1995 when not too many people were talking yet about sustainability. But at that time, we mostly were talking about reducing our footprint, so reducing our emissions, reducing our energy usage, reducing our waste, less water, all those sorts of things that are real easy to measure and real easy to report on. And they're all the kinds of things that people do when they first get started in the sustainability movement. They're important things to do. We continue to work on all those activities. I hope all of you are working on those activities, but just that's not really enough. So in 2005, we launched our next set of 10-year goals, and we really focused more on how can we deliver solutions that help the world. What can we offer that's really breakthrough technology that helps improve human health, or the water supply, or the food supply, or building infrastructure, or things that are really critical to human well-being. And we came up with some really great breakthroughs that we announced during that period, and that was great too. But then we decided, well, you know, we need to do something a little more than that, and so we decided to really focus on the blueprint. So what we're really looking at right now is trying to establish a blueprint for how companies can help create a more sustainable society. So it's really about redefining the role that business plays in society and how we help create a model that other people can copy and emulate. A lot of companies don't like to have anybody know what they're doing. They like to keep all their work top secret. I used to work in R&D, and I'd get the lectures from the patent lawyers. You have to keep everything top secret until we can get a patent filed on it. And that was fine. I did that. I filed a bunch of patents on my technologies. That was great fun for a while. But I'm happy now that I work in sustainability, I get to share with you everything that I do. And we really have a different philosophy around sustainability, and that is that we want the world to know what we do so that you can pick the parts of it that are right for you and use that information to make your own decisions and implement your own plans. And it's really about implementing plans that makes the difference. So we need each and every one of you collaborating with us, working with other partners, working with government agencies, working with universities, working with NGOs, partnering with companies who you might think of as your competitors, to help develop solutions to these world challenges that we're facing right now, and of which, of course, is plastics in the environment. So I encourage all of you to work collaboratively on those things. Think about how you can really go to the next step in your performance the way that Dow has. You can see listed across the bottom 7 of our key things that we work on for sustainability. One's advancing a circular economy. Of course, that's the topic for discussion at this meeting, so I'll give a few more specific examples. When we look at what packaging can do, because we make plastic that goes into packaging, that's one of our biggest markets, we really see the biggest opportunity for the value of our material to be in reducing food waste. We know that about 1/3 of the food produced on this planet is lost. We know that 1 billion people are food insecure, meaning they either don't have enough calories or they don't have enough nutrition. We know that we produce plenty of food to feed all of those people. So where's the gap here? Well, we don't have the right distribution system. We don't have refrigeration in places where we need refrigeration. We don't have supply chain management. We don't have infrastructure. In some places, we don't have roads to get the food from where it's produced to where it needs to be consumed. Or we don't have the right processing technologies. Or we don't have the right packaging. And if we don't have the right packaging and the food spoils because it's not protected adequately during distribution, then we have wasted all the resources that go into making and producing and transporting that food. And that includes using the land, the fertilizer, the feed, the seed, the tractors, the processing equipment, the trucks that haul it to the market, the space in the market where it's displayed before it's sold, the trouble that the consumer's gone through to get it home, all of that for it to end up in the garbage. And then we have to manage the waste once the waste is created. And if it's not managed properly, it can produce methane, a greenhouse gas, 21 or 23 or 25 times as potent as CO2, depending on which study you believe. So there's lots of opportunities to improve the condition of the world by focusing on food waste. And it's not what we think of when we look in the garbage and we see a cheese wrapper that looks to us like it's something that's not very valuable to society. So we really need to rethink the way we think about sustainability if we want to have the most impact. Here's an example with meat packaging. And this sort of answers the question that we got this morning about can you sell it for less? Well, you can always sell things for less, but you can't always make them for less. So in this case, we're able to make it for less and sell it for less in order to provide even more value. We've reduced the weight of the food packaging significantly, and at the same time, we have increased the shelf life of the meat in this example. So here's an example of how technology not only reduces the consumption of resources in the packaging, but it protects the investment that we've made in creating the product inside the package. So this is really where the value comes in and how we can think about sustainability in a new and better way. Here's an example from a research report that we helped sponsor with True Cost, looking at the value of plastics compared to other materials and how much further improvement we could get if we even did better things with plastics, like using more bio-based materials and recycling at a higher rate. And what True Cost found was that the environmental burdens associated with alternative materials was 4 times as high as for plastics. They had done an original study where they determined that the environmental burden of using plastics globally amounted to $150 billion or so. And we said, that's very interesting, but what would the cost of the alternative be? Because you can't just get rid of the plastic, you have to replace it with something for most applications, the straw perhaps being an exception. If you don't have to have the straw, you don't need to take a straw. Right? But if you're talking about something that you're not going to be able to get away with not replacing, like the frame on a window, right? If you have a house and you have a window in your house, you have to have a frame that goes around the window that holds the window in place. You can't just put a pane of glass there. It'll fall on the ground and break, and then you'll have broken glass and nothing covering the opening in your wall, right? So if you don't have the plastic on that window frame, what are you going to use instead? Wood or metal, right? And what are the burdens associated with that wood or metal? Well, those are the important things that we have to think about when we try to make assessments about sustainability performance of our materials. And when you're working on circular economy, it's especially important that we look at these alternatives, because it's very simple and easy to say that option A is more circular than option B. It's not so easy to say that option A is better than option B, because we might not know what all those factors are unless we've done a thorough assessment. We're big supporters of circular economy. It's part of our 2025 goals. But we also make sure that we do the technical assessment to assure that there's a benefit. I can tell you we're working with a major retailer right now on a project, and they said, we want to do an LCA on this project to make sure there's a benefit before we do it. It sounds good, and we know that it's going to play well to our consumers, but we only implement projects where we can calculate a benefit. And I was so happy to hear them say that to me, because some of the other companies that we talk to don't have that same criteria. So if the partners that you work with don't have that criteria, you might want to ask them, shall we do a calculation and determine what the benefit of this change is? And then you might decide that it's even more compelling than you thought. You might want to accelerate your action. You might want to implement more projects similar to the kind that you're considering. All very important to do. You've already heard from a few of the other speakers about the tsunami of criticism around plastics. The issue of plastics waste in the environment is very, very serious, and it's very, very real. So do not underestimate the importance of that message and the impact that it will have on industry, and the necessity for us to take immediate action to fix that problem. Keep in mind, though, that some of the things that you hear are media hype might be slightly exaggerated. It doesn't mean that the problem isn't real and that it doesn't deserve our total attention. It does. And I spend almost all of my time working on that problem, by the way. Okay. But keep in mind that when you see something in the news, it might not be from a scientific study. I always like to ask people the question, why do we want a more circular economy? Right? People say we want circular economy. Why do we want circular economy? It's important that we ask this question because it's important to know what our criteria for success are to decide if implementing a project is worthwhile or not. And if we decide on our criteria, and here's some of the things that circular economy can bring us listed on the screen, right? Reducing energy usage, saving waste from being landfilled, avoid waste from becoming litter, adding jobs. For some people, circular economy is more about the economy and less about the circular. For some, it's more about the environmental benefits and less about the social benefits. So different people have a different idea of what circular economy is. We take a very broad approach to circular economy. If I implement a project and it reduces the amount of raw material I need and reduces the amount of waste that I produce, then that's creating a more circular system. And for me, it's always about the system. It's never about the single product, because I know that my products are not used in isolation. They're used with other products. So if I make a package to deliver a steak to a consumer, that package would not exist if not for the steak. So protecting that steak is the most important thing I can do to protect the resources of that system. And then ensuring the recyclability after the steak is delivered to the consumer safely and for the amount of time that they need to keep it fresh in the refrigerator is the second thing I'll worry about. But the first thing I need to worry about is always delivering the product. So if I understand what all these criteria are, then I can answer the question of how much improvement am I really delivering with my new technology. So you don't have to use these criteria. You can come up with your own set of criteria. But I encourage you to always have some criteria either in the back of your mind or written down on the piece of paper in front of you to be able to evaluate your projects against so that you know if you're providing the right solutions. We have to think also about some of the things that are proposed as circular economy that aren't really creating more circular systems. They might just be something that sounds like a good idea, like replacing a plastic straw with a paper straw. I would guess that paper straws are probably recycled at about the same rate as plastic straws, which would be a rate of 0. Now you can put it in the recycling bin with your other paper, but you could put plastic straws in with the recycling bin with your other plastic too. So I don't think that there's any intentional collection systems that specifically ask for straws of either type. So I would guess absent those collection systems, the recycling rate's going to be pretty low. The amount of material available from either one of those streams is pretty low. So switching from one to another is not really creating a more circular system. It might prevent a turtle from choking on the straw should it get into the environment. And if that's your goal, then it might be a thing to do. But think about the criteria before you make those assessments and decisions, because you want to make sure that you're doing it with a scientific mindset. There's lots of things we have to work on specific on the recycling side. So there are technical issues with recycling, how we design materials. We have projects to design our packaging to be more recyclable. We have a number of technologies in that space. We have a couple projects on infrastructure. If you don't have the right infrastructure to collect recyclables and process the recyclables, then you're not going to be able to achieve a higher recycling rate. You also need consumer behavior, so you need them to put the materials in the right place. If you live in a country that has a formal system for collection of recyclables, they need to put it in the formal system. If you live in a country that has only an informal system, then you need to be providing those materials to the informal system in a way that they can be collected and reused. And that might be pretty easy for something like PET bottles or aluminum cans. It might be really, really difficult for something like a pouch that contains peanuts or granola mix. And then you need to have an end market for the product. You have to be able to do something with it once it gets collected, sorted, processed, and used. If you don't have somewhere to use the product, it's not going to get recycled. So we try to work on all these things in conjunction. And here's the examples that I showed earlier. I won't go through these again today, other than to say that these represent the different phases of the project, right? So we've got collection, we've got the design, we've got the end use, we've got the consumer education, all the pieces going together. We like to also look at the circle, if you will, of steps that our products go through. So the manufacturing, the making of the packaging, the filling of the product, the consumer use, and the collection for recycling. And we like to look at how each of our technologies fits at different points along that cycle. It's important that we have solutions for the whole entire life cycle. We can't solve the problem merely by coming up with one solution for one part of the life cycle, because it all has to work together. It's a system, a very complicated ecosystem, I might add, not a simple system, a very complicated system. But we need different solutions to solve different parts of the problem. So whenever we have a gap, We target a solution at that particular part of the gap. We have a compatibilizer technology that makes materials that otherwise would be too dissimilar to recycle together, and we make it possible to recycle them in a stream that contains the material that's like one of those materials. For example, if you mix polyethylene and ethylene vinyl alcohol, which is a barrier polymer that keeps oxygen out of packages, normally when you mix those two materials together, you get something that doesn't look very good and doesn't have very good physical properties. If you use a compatibilizer, though, you can make a film or a part that has good physical and mechanical properties and can be used for all sorts of different applications. Here's us getting an award for edible oil packaging that we developed in India. This is an opportunity to take several technologies that had been developed and put them in place in an application that required a very specific set of performance requirements, but where we also wanted to add recyclability to the performance of that packaging, something that didn't previously exist. Here's a sort of a family tree of different applications and different products that we offer. I'm not going to go through these specific examples, but just to illustrate how different technologies can be used for different applications. There's no one magic bullet. There's no one single solution that's going to fix every single problem. We sell about 2,000 different grades of plastics globally, and they're used in even more applications than that. So you need more than one solution if you want to be able to deliver value to everybody that works in all those different marketplaces. We have a research project that's now becoming a commercialization project called Material Recovery for the Future. This is to implement commercially sorting technology that allows flexible plastic packaging, so things like pouches and bags and wraps, to be sorted from other types of recyclables. So in the US and in some other areas of the world, all the recyclables are collected together in a single stream. So the bottles, the cans, the boxes, the bags, all collected together. And if we want to get the flexible plastic packaging out, we have to be able to sort it efficiently and effectively. That technology is not in common use today, but we're actually working on demonstrating that it's commercially viable to do that and sell that product into an end market, and we've just recently announced that in the US. Already talked this morning about plastic roads. We'll be launching a project here in Thailand with the sponsor of this event, SCG, to help us implement the plastic road project here in Thailand, to take plastic and put it into the manufacture of asphalt roads, so very exciting news there. We have end-of-life projects, for example, on hard-to-recycle plastics for collection. This is our energy bag pilot project. We have a project that we did in South Africa, which was to help take food packaging that delivered food to needy children who did not have enough food, taught them about the packaging and about the recycling of that packaging, then took that packaging and made it into equipment for their schools. So things like school desks and chairs for their school. So really combining all of the elements of the life cycle of that package and that product and the recycling into an educational platform and a platform for social good, but also a platform to develop new uses for materials, and that's called the virtuous circle. Oops, got a few builds on there that I forgot about. Here's an example of some of the research projects that we've implemented. I talked about a couple of these already. I'll mention also the Stemming the Tide report from the Ocean Conservancy that was released about 3 years ago. That was really the first report that told us where most of the plastic waste in the ocean is coming from and how it's getting there and how we prevent it from getting there. So a very, very important piece of scientific work. Anytime you have a problem that you want to solve, it's important to understand that problem and understand the science behind both the cause of the problem and the potential solutions for the problem. So the Stemming the Tide report shown on the screen there is a great example of how we collaborated with an NGO, the Ocean Conservancy, and some other NGOs collaborated on that also, WWF and a few others, plus some private companies and some universities to generate that information. We've made an industry commitment. We committed at the Our Ocean conference a few years ago to invest money in marine debris solutions. We joined this year Closed Loop Ocean to help provide funding for solutions to implement programs that will help reduce waste getting into the ocean and increase recyclability of our packaging around Southeast Asia. I'm attending a meeting later this week